She was a federal judge with the kind of reputation that made courtrooms fall silent the moment she walked in. Disciplined, untouchable, revered. But behind the stern robes and iron gaze was a secret so reckless, so damning, it could collapse everything she'd spent 3 decades building. Her name was Judge Celeste Drayton, and for months she had been slipping away from the cold marble halls of justice into shadows no gavel could reach. His name was Dorian Creed, a man with charm in his eyes and a prison record under his belt. 3 years prior, she'd sat on the bench and sentenced him. Then, somehow, drawn by desire or delusion, she found herself entangled in something far darker than lust. It wasn't just an affair. It was betrayal disguised as intimacy. Corruption wrapped in silk sheets. She thought no one would ever know. But someone did. Celeste's stepdaughter, Amira, young and bright-eyed, was a law student, driven, precise, and too curious for her own safety. When Amira stumbled upon the truth, she didn't run. She documented. She followed. She gathered every thread of her stepmother's sin until she could weave a noose out of it. And then she died. A wine glass, a soft couch, a lifeless body. A future snuffed out with quiet precision. Because when justice is mocked from within, the soul rots quietly. And when power dances with the devil, it always demands blood in return. This is the story of how a woman sworn to uphold the law made a pact with everything she once claimed to stand against, and how one innocent life paid the price for her secrets. This is True Crime's Altar, where we lay bare the stories too disturbing to stay buried. If you believe that the truth, however grotesque, deserves a voice, and if you understand that evil often hides in the most sacred places, subscribe and share this story. Judge Celeste Drayton had never once arrived late to a courtroom. In 32 years of law and 16 on the federal bench, she was known across 3 states as the woman who never flinched, never blinked, and never broke routine. At exactly 8:45 a.m., she always reviewed her docket. At 9 o'clock sharp, she took the bench. As she skimmed through files on a wire fraud case out of East Baton Rouge, her husband's number appeared on her phone. Celeste nearly ignored it. Langston knew better than to call while she prepped. But something in her gut told her to answer. "Langston," she said flatly. His voice shook. "It's Amira." She sat up. "What about her?" "The police just called. They found her." Celeste's eyes locked on the wall in front of her. The silence in the room became crushing. "What did you say?" she asked, though she'd heard him clearly. "She's dead." 39 minutes later, her black sedan pulled up outside a modest brick building nestled in a quiet neighborhood of Shinover Park. 2 police cruisers, crime scene tape, and a small crowd of onlookers confirmed the unthinkable. A thin officer at the door raised his hand. "Ma'am, you can't. I'm Judge Celeste Drayton. Amira Drayton is my stepdaughter." He blinked, then stepped aside. "Detective Harvell's upstairs, apartment 2D. Celeste climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. Amira was only 23. Langston's daughter from his first marriage. A second-year law student. Bright, reserved, determined. They'd never been close, but the relationship had always been respectful. Langston was already there, collapsed in a hallway chair, face buried in his hands. When he saw his wife, he stood and pulled her into a trembling embrace. She felt him sobbing against her coat. "Judge Drayton?" The voice came from behind. She turned. A tall man with tired eyes and a week-old beard stepped forward, flashing a badge. "Detective Lyle Harvell, Homicide Division. I'm sorry for your loss." Celeste's mouth tightened. "Homicide?" "It's early, but the scene raised concerns. We're waiting on the medical examiner." "I want to see her." "Are you sure?" Harvell asked gently. "It could be traumatic. I've reviewed hundreds of crime scene photos, Detective. I'd like to see my stepdaughter now." He led her into the apartment. The living room was neat in that typical student way. Textbooks, a lit laptop, half-empty mug. On the table sat 2 glasses and an open bottle of red wine. Amira lay on the couch, arms folded like she'd fallen asleep mid-conversation. Her skin was pale, her lips tinged with blue. Celeste's breath caught in her chest. When did this happen? Best guess? Last night, between 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock, no signs of forced entry or struggle. One glass was used, the other untouched. Could have been something in the wine. Labs will tell us more. Celeste scanned the room. Pictures lined the mantel. Amira with Langston. Amira at a protest. Amira with classmates. Not one of them included her. Who found her? Neighbor downstairs. Said Amira was supposed to bring over class notes this morning. When she didn't show and didn't answer, she used her spare key. Langston entered behind them, spotted his daughter's body, and dropped to his knees beside the sofa. She should have been living with us, he whispered. I said that to her, over and over. The detective pulled Celeste aside. Was Amira seeing anyone? Boyfriend? Close friends? She was private, focused on school. Maybe Langston knows more. Harvell nodded. We've heard from neighbors and classmates she'd been tense lately. Coming home late. Skipping lectures. Celeste frowned. That doesn't sound like her. As a judge, I assume you'll want this case closed quickly. My professional title has nothing to do with this. I'm her stepmother. One last thing. Were you and your husband home last night? Yes. We had dinner. I prepped for court. He worked on his firm's filings. We went to bed around 11. Standard questions, Harvell said calmly. We ask everyone close to the deceased. The apartment began to fill with CSI techs. Celeste urged Langston to go home and rest. There was nothing left to do here.
If you're enjoying this video, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. Share and like this video. It's free and won't cost anything, but it helps and encourages us to grow and do more. Thank you for your kindness, and back to the video.
But before she left, she turned back to the detective. I want updates. Every step. No delays. I'll keep you informed, he said. But I have to warn you, cases like this don't always unfold the way you expect. She held his gaze, steady as ever. I've seen everything there is to see in a courtroom, detective. His eyes narrowed slightly. Then you know better than most how easily people lie under oath. There is a silence in every home where secrets are fed. It hums beneath dinner tables, behind picture frames, inside bottles of wine. And when the truth finally speaks, it doesn't knock, it breaks the door down. 2 days later, the lab confirmed it. Amira had been poisoned. A rare compound was found in her bloodstream, one that could easily dissolve into red wine without altering its taste or smell. Death would have come quickly, likely within 30 minutes of ingestion. Detective Harvell sat at his desk, staring at the toxicology report. Doesn't add up, he muttered. Something new? Asked his partner, Detective Salo Rhodes, placing a coffee beside him. He nodded slowly. A girl from a respectable family, studying law, no known enemies. Who poisons her? Salo leaned on the desk. You talk to the neighbors? Yeah. And classmates. Everyone says the same thing. Reserved. Smart. But in the last month, something changed. One friend said she was working on a personal project. Didn't tell anyone what it was. You check her laptop yet? Encrypted. Same with her phone. But we found something in her handwritten notes. He pulled out an evidence bag. Inside, a single sheet of paper. A list of scribbled thoughts. At the bottom, one name stood out. Creed case. Check link. Salo raised an eyebrow. Dorian Creed? That name's familiar. Harvell tapped his pen. Exactly. Ran it through our system. 3 years ago, Dorian Creed got nailed for major financial fraud. Paper trail was airtight. He should have done 5 to 7, minimum. He only served 14 months. Selaw's eyes narrowed. And the judge? Harvell held up the case file, pointing to the signature. Celeste Drayton. Sala let out a slow whistle. That's not a coincidence. Harvell nodded. I've already pulled the full case file. I'm going back to talk to the Draytons. The Drayton residence sat behind black iron gates in the upscale Eastland Grove district. Stone columns, three-car garage, white-gloved landscaping. Inside, Langston and Celeste waited in the sunken living room, polished and quiet. Celeste rose when Harvell entered. Detective. I have an update. Toxicology confirmed it. Amira was poisoned. Not your everyday substance either. Something highly specialized. Langston's face turned pale. So it's murder. Without question. Yes, Harvell said, turning to them. Did Amira ever mention any enemies? A project that might have stirred trouble? She called last week, Celeste answered. Said she was excited about a paper, something on economic crime and ethical gray areas. Did she mention the Dorian Creed case? Celeste's expression barely shifted, but her tone remained composed. I don't recall that one. Harvell studied her. You presided over it. I've presided over hundreds of cases. True, but this one stands out. Large-scale fraud, surprising sentence. Creed walked with parole in under 2 years. Langston spoke up. Amira liked studying sentencing discrepancies. She'd compare similar cases to see how judges interpreted the law. Harvell nodded. Did she have access to rare chemicals? Anything through her school? No, Langston said. She was a law student, not chemistry. What about you, Mr. Drayton? Your construction company? What about you, Mr. Drayton? Detective, I insist this investigation proceed with full urgency. If necessary, I'll request federal resources. I appreciate that, Judge Drayton. We're doing everything we can. Before leaving, Harvell asked to see Amira's room. She hadn't lived here in 2 years, Celeste said as they walked upstairs. But she visited on holidays. The room was pristine. Bedspread untouched. Books on shelves. It felt more like a guest room than a daughter's sanctuary. When did she move out? When she started law school. She wanted independence. I supported that. Harvell opened drawers, checked under the bed. In the back of the closet, he found a taped-up cardboard box. May I? Celeste nodded. Inside, childhood books, notebooks, and a photo album. He flipped through. Amira as a toddler. School portraits. A family barbecue. But several photo slots were empty. Pictures had been torn out. Do you know what was in these spots? He asked. I don't, she replied. I've never looked through her albums. He closed the box. Thank you for your time. Back in his car, Harvell called Sela. Anything from the text yet? Still working. But here's the kicker. Creed? He's out. Been working for a nonprofit in Midtown. Helps rehabilitate ex-cons. Funded by the Justice Forward Trust. And chairwoman of the board? Sela paused. Celeste Drayton. Harvell let out a breath. Check his address. I want a conversation. The next few days were a blur of documents, interviews, and surveillance. On day 5, Tex finally cracked Amira's laptop. At first glance, just essays, legal briefs, syllabi, but one folder was hidden deep, double encrypted. Inside were dozens of photos. Celeste Drayton. In a cafe, on a park bench, entering a brownstone building. In every photo, standing beside her, Dorian Creed. Who's that? The technician asked. Harvell stared. That's Creed. He opened the Creed case file again. Dorian Creed. 34. Convicted of fraud totaling over $2 million. Forged ledgers. Shell companies. By law, he should have received 7 years. Instead, Judge Drayton gave him 2, with parole possible in 1. The court record cited mitigating factors and lack of direct violence. Harvell scowled. This stinks, he muttered. Sela entered with 2 more coffees. Creed got out after 14 months. Played the part, model inmate, rehab programs, community outreach. But here's the twist. He changed lawyers just before his parole hearing. Harvell looked up. To who? Malcolm Trent. Top tier. Charges $600 an hour. Creed's bank accounts were frozen. So who paid him? Harvell raised his brow. They were in the same law class. Drayton and Trent. Same student government, too. Harvell leaned back in his chair. She used her old classmate to get him out. The question is why. In another folder on Amira's laptop, he found court transcripts, news articles, sentencing comparisons. She had been researching her stepmother's rulings. In yet another, photos, same park, same cafe, different days. Celeste and Creed exchanging envelopes, sitting close, smiling. These were all taken in the last 3 months, the text said. Last one was just days before Amira died. She was building a case, Harvell murmured. She wasn't just snooping. She was preparing to expose them. Selah leaned against the desk. Maybe she was going to the Judicial Review Board. Or worse, for Drayton, maybe she was going to the press. Sin flourishes in silence, but exposure demands sacrifice. And when light dares to touch what has long dwelled in shadow, those in power will strike with everything they have to stay in the dark. Coltrane Law School buzzed with quiet tension when Detective Harvell stepped through the glass doors. In the corridors, students moved like whispers, their eyes heavy from too many late nights and too few answers. Professor Yolanda Clay, Amira's ethics professor and advisor, met him in her cramped office lined with books and framed quotes from Baldwin and bell hooks. She offered tea. He declined. Amira was one of our most gifted students, she said, voice low. Focused. Sharp. Sometimes too sharp. Do you know what she was working on before she died? Clay hesitated. Officially, a paper on conflicts of interest in federal case law. Unofficially, she paused. She came to me a few weeks ago asking how one might file a judicial misconduct complaint, hypothetically, of course. Did she name anyone? No, but she was persistent. Asked about the penalties for a judge involved in a personal relationship with someone they'd previously sentenced. She was careful with her wording, but the subtext was clear. What would those penalties be? Suspension, disbarment, maybe prison. It depends on the extent. Harvell nodded. Did she ever talk about her stepmother? Clay's gaze sharpened. Rarely. But there was a distance, a tension she didn't discuss. She once said Judge Drayton believed the blindfold on Lady Justice wasn't for fairness. It was so Justice could turn away when it needed to. Anyone close to Amira we can talk to? Jessica Path, her study partner, and Michael Tolliver. They dated for a while. Harvell found Jessica in the cafeteria, nervously picking at a fruit cup. Her eyes were red and swollen. She was my best friend, Jessica whispered. I don't understand how this happened. Did she tell you what she was working on recently? Jessica hesitated. She called it personal research. Wouldn't let me read any of it. I thought maybe she was spying on her ex, Michael. She thought he was cheating. Followed him, took pictures. But later she seemed more serious. I asked her about it. She said it was bigger than that. Something she couldn't tell me about because she didn't want to put me at risk. Did she ever mention the Creed case? Jessica furrowed her brow. But she did ask me about an article we read in Ethics, about judges crossing professional lines with former defendants. Called it a legal loophole. When was that? Jessica blinked. 2 weeks before she died. Harvell left the campus with the weight of the pieces falling together. Amira had found the truth. She had photos, court documents, funding links, all of it. And she wasn't bluffing. She'd set a meeting with her stepmother, and hours later, she was dead. That night, surveillance teams picked up Judge Drayton's car leaving the courthouse just after 6 p.m. Instead of heading home, she drove to a quiet spot near Crescent Park. 10 minutes later, Dorian Creed arrived in a cab. From across the street, Harvell sat in an unmarked car with binoculars. Inside a small, dimly lit bistro, Drayton and Creed sat by the window. Their conversation looked tense. She spoke with sharp gestures. He leaned in, trying to calm her. 40 minutes passed before they left and sat inside her car. Another 30 minutes of hushed debate. Then Creed exited and caught a cab. Back at the precinct, Harvell laid the photos across the table for Sella. "They're spooked," he said. Creed told her I visited him. "They're planning damage control." "We still don't have a murder weapon," Sela reminded him. "No proof she had the poison. No proof she delivered it." "Not yet." The next morning, they pulled cell tower data and traffic cam footage. Celeste's phone pinged from her house all night the day of Amira's death. But there, Sela pointed at the screen. Camera caught the second Drayton car, registered to Langston near Amira's Street at 8:37 p.m. "Langston says he was at a business dinner," Harvell said. "So either he's lying or he lent her the car." The deeper they dug, the tighter the net grew. Harvell was convinced. But proving intent required more. The closer truth draws its blade, the louder power starts to whisper. It bargains. It pleads. But justice, when betrayed, never forgets the sound of its own voice. That evening, Harvell followed a hunch. He parked across from Celeste Drayton's house. Minutes later, Creed appeared and got into the passenger side of her vehicle. Inside the car, their voices were low but urgent. "Are you sure they don't know everything?" Celeste asked. "No," Creed replied. "But Harvell showed me pictures. Said Amira was following us." Celeste closed her eyes. "I told you she was onto something. She kept asking about my cases, about the foundation. What if the DA doesn't bury this? They don't have evidence, only speculation. And if they find the burner phone?" "I destroyed it," she snapped. "The gloves, too." "But tech is advanced. What if they recover something?" "Let them try. He's too heartbroken to see anything clearly. If I fall, so do you. Don't forget that." They sat in silence, the weight of their sins pressing against the leather seats. Finally, Creed stepped out, catching a ride back into the night. Celeste remained still behind the wheel, her eyes fixed on nothing. All she could see was everything slipping away. Captain Minter's office was tense. Detective Harvell stood across from not just his superior, but also District Attorney Vernell Kiles. "The Drayton investigation," the captain began stiffly, "is becoming delicate." "Delicate?" Harvell raised an eyebrow. "You're pressuring a federal judge," Kiles cut in, "without hard evidence. We can't risk tarnishing her name unless we're certain." "She's hiding something," Harvell said. "She and Creed were involved. Amira found out. That's motive. She had opportunity, and the rare toxin, only accessible through the court's evidence locker, points back to her courtroom." "That's all circumstantial," the DA said. "She called me herself this morning. Expressed concern about your tactics." Harvell's jaw tensed. "So she knows about my visit to Creed. That says plenty." "That's enough," the captain snapped. "You're not off the case, but you are to proceed cautiously. No more direct contact with Judge Drayton unless cleared." "Yes, sir." Harvell turned and left, but his resolve hardened. Pressure from above only meant one thing. The truth was close. Back in the bullpen, Sela waved him over. "We cracked the final layer on Amira's laptop," she said. "Emails. One from Amira to Celeste, dated the day before she died." She handed him the printout. "Celeste, I know about you and him. I have proof. We need to talk. Tomorrow, 8 p.m., my apartment. Amira." There was no reply, at least not by email. Another file revealed journal entries, Amira's own thoughts typed and saved privately, saw them together again today. Same man. It's definitely Creed. She sentenced him 3 years ago, then gave him a slap on the wrist. They're still involved. I have pictures. This is corruption and betrayal. I won't be silent. The final entry, she's coming over tomorrow night. I'll confront her. If she refuses to be honest, I'll report her, even if it hurts my father. The truth matters more." Harvell set down the pages slowly. "She gave her a chance to come clean. Selah nodded grimly. And instead, she was murdered. They had enough. The next morning, they brought Celeste Drayton in for formal questioning. She arrived with her attorney, sharp as ever in a slate gray suit. But behind her eyes, something had dimmed. Judge Drayton, Harvell said evenly, we now know Amira invited you to her apartment the night she died, and we believe that meeting turned fatal. I never received that message, she replied coolly. It went to the same personal email you've used to communicate with her before. Maybe it went to spam. Harvell laid out photographs. Here you are, with Creed, in cafes, on park benches, entering buildings together, handing him documents, kissing outside his apartment. The attorney bristled. Her personal life isn't criminal. But a personal relationship with a man she once sentenced? Harvell countered. While funding the organization that employs him. That's judicial misconduct. And when Amira found out and threatened exposure, she wound up dead. You have no proof, Celeste replied, voice low. Then explain the lipstick on Amira's wine glass. Matches the brand and chemical profile of the one you use daily. I've drunk from glasses at her apartment before. And your husband's car parked near her building that night? He was across town, confirmed by restaurant footage. Which means you used it. Her composure cracked for a half second. Finally, Harvell leaned in, and we found the burner phone. The one that called Amira minutes before you arrived. It's an evidence. Fingerprints pending. A lie, but one worth the risk. Celeste's fingers trembled slightly on the table. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. You will. And when the prints come back, this all becomes official. The attorney began to speak, but Celeste raised a hand. No. Let him finish. She stared at Harvell, eyes no longer cold, just tired. You think you're smarter than me, detective, she said. But you're not. Then prove it. Tell me what really happened. She inhaled slowly, exhaled, then closed her eyes. I didn't plan to kill her. Don't say another word, the lawyer snapped. Stop, she said firmly. Then she looked up. I did go to her apartment. She confronted me, showed me the photos, told me she was going to report me the next morning. Her voice cracked. I tried to talk her down, told her it would destroy her father, that it would destroy me. She didn't care. She said I was a fraud, a woman who pretended to stand for law and fairness but was sleeping with a man I once sentenced. She paused. I had the wine, brought it as a peace offering. The poison was in my purse. I'd taken it from the court evidence locker. I don't know why. Maybe I sensed where this was heading. Did you put it in her glass? Harvell asked. She turned her back to check something on her laptop. I poured it in, mixed it with wine. I watched her drink it. What did she say? Celeste's voice fell to a whisper. She looked at me and said, You'll do anything to protect your lies, won't you? Then she collapsed. Tears welled but didn't fall. I wiped down everything, took the bottle, the gloves, the phone, and I left. And just like that, justice, once her shield, became her noose. For when the one who swears to protect the law becomes its violator, the fall is not just disgrace. It is damnation. Celeste Drayton was arrested for second-degree murder and obstruction of justice. The charges were later upgraded. She pled guilty to manslaughter during her arraignment, but the prosecution pursued a full trial. The scandal shook the judicial system. Creed was arrested on financial corruption charges. His freedom bought with influence was now revoked. Langston Drayton, shattered and hollow, never returned to his company. Detective Harvell visited him once more. She wanted to do the right thing, he said quietly. Langston only nodded. She believed in justice more than any of us did. When sin wears a robe and wields a gavel, it fools even those closest to it. But the truth never dies quietly. It screams from the grave until someone listens. If you ever find yourself trapped in the shadows of a loved one's wrongdoing, let Amira's story remind you. Speak up, but speak with wisdom. Choose love. but never at the cost of your conscience. And above all, go to the proper authorities. No secret is worth a soul. What are your thoughts on this story? Do you believe Judge Drayton deserved the full weight of the law? What would you have done in Amira's position? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe to True Crimes Altar for more real-life stories told with depth and emotion. Hit the like button if this case gripped you, and let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, stay safe and stay alert, because justice doesn't sleep, and neither do we.